For years, British tabloids went wild with a story the palace never confirmed or denied. The claim was shocking. Britain's most beloved royal couple, married for more than 70 years, were living apart. Not just in different wings of the same palace, not behind the same grand doors, but miles away from each other. One remained at the center of the monarchy's power, while the other stayed at a private farmhouse on a Norfolk estate by the sea. The rumors spread fast, the headlines were brutal, and the public wanted answers more than ever. Now, Princess Anne, known for speaking plainly and never dressing things up, has finally addressed it, and what she revealed flips the entire story on its head. The truth about Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip's marriage is not what the tabloids pushed for years. In fact, it is far more powerful than most people expected.
I think there were not many people who understood just how broad his interests were and how supportive he was of an astonishingly wide range of organizations.
To understand it, you have to go back to 2017. That was the year Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, did something no royal had done before. At 96 years old, after more than 22,000 solo royal engagements across 65 years, he stepped away from public life. Think about that number for a moment. 22,000 appearances. That is not just a career, it is a lifetime of service on an unbelievable scale. When he retired, many people assumed he would spend his remaining years quietly beside Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, but that is not what happened. Most couples follow a simple pattern after decades of hard work. You slow down, go home, and spend quiet time beside the person you love. That is what people expected Prince Philip to do after retiring. Sit with the Queen, enjoy the final chapter together, and live peacefully at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. But that is not what happened.
For the rest of us, it's more a question of, okay, we have to shift the way we support. And that's what we need to do.
Instead, Prince Philip moved to Wood Farm, a 5-bedroom cottage hidden away in a quiet corner of the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. It was miles from where Queen Elizabeth continued carrying out her royal duties. No grand ballrooms, no endless lines of uniformed staff, no golden ceilings, just a simple farmhouse with timber beams and a wide view of the sea. The tabloids exploded with dramatic headlines. "Royal Rift," one paper shouted. Another claimed Philip abandons palace. A third pushed the story even harder, pointing at 73 years of marriage and asking what went wrong. But here's the question almost nobody in the press dared to ask. What if the tabloids had it completely wrong? What if this arrangement was not a sign of trouble at all, but proof of something deeper, wiser, and far stronger than gossip writers could understand? That is exactly what Princess Anne is now explaining, and the answer begins with an old tradition deeply rooted in British aristocratic culture, a custom most people outside that world have never even heard about. To understand it, we have to go all the way back to 1947.
Meghan must answer for her behavior. She has sent emails and made calls relentlessly. She misrepresented me, Catherine, and William to Harry, and in doing so, she drove a wedge through this family. That is the plain truth, and she knows it.
The truth is, Philip and Elizabeth's unusual living arrangement did not start in their later years. It actually goes all the way back to the beginning of their marriage. When Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip settled into Clarence House as newlyweds in 1949, they were already living in a way that surprised many people. They did not share the same bedroom. But inside their social circle, this was not shocking at all. It was simply normal. Philip's cousin, Lady Pamela Hicks, who also served as one of the Queen's ladies-in-waiting, spoke about this very openly in her biography. She explained that many upper-class British couples traditionally kept separate bedrooms, not because of distance or lack of love, but because they valued privacy, rest, and personal space. Her explanation was surprisingly simple. You sleep better when you are not disturbed. You keep your own routine, your own quiet, your own comfort, and when you want closeness, you simply choose to go to each other. As she described it, the choice itself becomes the intimacy. That one idea changes the entire way people think about their relationship. This was never a cold or distant marriage. In fact, it showed a deep understanding between them. Long before modern relationship experts started talking about personal space, Elizabeth and Philip were already living it. Their bedrooms at Clarence House sat right beside each other with connecting doors. They could be together anytime they wished. And this pattern stayed the same everywhere they lived: Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Balmoral, Sandringham. For 73 years, from 1947 until Prince Philip's passing in 2021, this quiet system of closeness and independence was simply how they lived. So when Prince Philip moved to Wood Farm in 2017, it was some shocking new move. It was simply an extension
Allegations
of a way
regarding
of
the
living that had
misuse of
shaped
royal
his marriage
association
from the
through
very
Meghan's
beginning.
Archewell
The
Foundation
idea was simple.
are now under legal
Love
review.
works best when both people respect each other's personal space and individual needs. Princess Anne grew up watching this balance between her parents, so she understood it better than almost anyone. Now let's talk about Wood Farm itself, because this place reveals a completely different side of Prince Philip. The cottage sits on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, about 2 miles from the main house. People who know it describe it as a comfortable farmhouse with open wooden beams and quiet views stretching out towards the sea. No massive halls, no heavy royal ceremony, just a simple home that feels surprisingly ordinary by royal standards. And when Philip moved in, he made sure it truly became his own space. He oversaw the installation of a brand new kitchen, hung his own watercolor paintings on the walls, and redesigned rooms to fit exactly how he liked them. Think about that for a second. After nearly 70 years living in grand palaces, places planned, arranged, and controlled by tradition, Wood Farm gave him something rare, a place where he could finally set things up his own way.
For decades, Prince Philip lived under intense public attention. At major events, he often walked a few steps behind his wife, the Queen. At countless appearances, he set aside his own strong ideas and ambitions to support the role of consort to one of the most recognized women on the planet. That was the life he accepted for nearly 70 years. But at 96 years old, inside a quiet 5-bedroom farmhouse in Norfolk, something changed. For the first time in decades, he had a place that truly felt like his. The walls held his own watercolor paintings, the rooms were arranged the way he liked, and the shelves were filled with his personal books and interests. He finally had time for the hobbies he loved. Philip spent hours painting watercolors, reading widely, and even managing a small truffle farm on the grounds. Friends could come visit and stay, something that was much harder inside the strict routines of palace life. And here is a detail that shocked many royal watchers. At Wood Farm, the staff did not wear uniforms. In the royal world, uniforms and strict roles are part of the entire system. But here, it was different. No heavy ceremony, just people living simply together. And when Queen Elizabeth visited, which happened far more often than the press reported, she relaxed into that same simple life. She would help cook and even wash dishes in the kitchen. Imagine that scene for a moment. The Queen of England standing at a sink in a quiet Norfolk cottage after dinner. That moment reveals what Wood Farm truly meant. It was not distance in their marriage, it was another side of it. Now we arrive at the moment that truly caught the attention of royal watchers and historians. Princess Anne, famous for being direct and never performing emotions for cameras, finally spoke about her parents' living arrangement. She has always protected her family's real private life, so when she talks about it, people listen closely. And what she said was surprisingly clear. According to Anne, the public and the press completely misunderstood the relationship between Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. For years, tabloids pushed the story of a distant and troubled marriage. But in her view, and in the view of those closest to the family, that version of events was simply wrong. Anne made one thing very clear. The distance between Buckingham Palace and Wood Farm was never about emotional separation. It was about deep respect between two people who understood each other perfectly.
Queen Elizabeth's role was not like a normal job that someone can pause or step away from. Her position was constitutional and constant. The work of the British state required her presence: weekly meetings with the Prime Minister, official ceremonies, state banquets, and endless responsibilities that never slowed down. She had promised lifelong service at just 21 years old, and she kept that promise every single day. Meanwhile, Prince Philip had truly earned the right to step away from the spotlight after decades of duty. By the time Prince Philip stepped away from public life, he had truly earned the right to rest. Princess Anne has spoken about her father's sacrifice with deep admiration, and when you hear the full story, it is impossible not to notice how much he gave up. Philip once had a promising career in the Royal Navy, a path many believed he was naturally brilliant at and deeply passionate about. But when Elizabeth became queen, everything changed. He left that life behind and accepted a role that came with strict expectations and constant public attention. For nearly 70 years, he stood beside the Queen at events, ceremonies, and endless official duties. He shook hands, made speeches, and supported causes across the world, all because that was the responsibility he had taken on.
By 2017, after decades of service, he had given an extraordinary amount of himself. And according to Princess Anne, Queen Elizabeth understood that completely. The life at Wood Farm was not distance from their marriage, it was a gift of freedom within it. Freedom to paint, to read, to enjoy quiet days without constant protocol. Those who knew them say the Queen supported this choice fully. In the end, the separate homes were not a weakness in their relationship. They were proof of a bond built on respect after more than 70 years together. To really understand why Prince Philip chose Wood Farm, you have to look at its long connection to royal history. This cottage was never just some random house on the Sandringham estate. For decades, it quietly sat at the center of important moments in the royal family, some joyful, others far more complicated. The royal family first began using Wood Farm in 1967, when Philip personally chose it as a retreat for relatives and guests. Unlike the massive Sandringham house nearby, this place offered something rare for royals: privacy. No heavy ceremony, no overwhelming staff, just a calm place where the family could relax and breathe for a while. Over the years, many members of the royal family spent time there. Prince Charles held shooting gatherings at the cottage during his university years and continued using it as a peaceful country escape later in life. Princess Diana even stayed there shortly before her engagement to Charles was announced, back when their relationship still looked like a storybook romance. Years later, Catherine Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, also visited Wood Farm early in her relationship with Prince William. That visit quietly signaled that the royal family was beginning to see the relationship as something serious. But Wood Farm also carries a much darker chapter in royal history, a story rarely spoken about publicly and unknown to many royal watchers. And that story begins in 1917 with King George V, Queen Mary, and a painful decision involving their youngest son, Prince John. In 1917, the young Prince John was quietly moved to Wood Farm, away from the main royal household. He lived there for about 2 years, cared for privately as his health challenges became more serious. Sadly, Prince John passed away there in 1919 at just 13 years old. It remains one of the more difficult chapters in royal history. Yet even with that sorrowful memory, Wood Farm continued to serve the royal family as a peaceful refuge. Over time, it became known as a place where members of the family could step away from public pressure and recharge in private. So when Prince Philip chose Wood Farm for his retirement, the decision carried deep meaning. This was not simply a quiet cottage, it was a place tied to generations of family history, a place Philip himself had selected decades earlier. More importantly, it felt like a true home rather than another palace built around duty and tradition. Then came March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic swept across Britain and changed everything.
At 98 years old, Philip faced serious health risks, which meant the arrangement between Wood Farm and Buckingham Palace could no longer continue safely. So Philip moved to Windsor Castle to live with Queen Elizabeth again. For the first time in years, they were together daily in the same household. With only a very small group of staff around them, royal writers later gave this quiet period a nickname, the HMS Bubble. During the pandemic, Windsor Castle became a small, sealed world for Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. Outside the castle walls, the crisis was spreading across the country. Inside, it was just the two of them living quietly with a very small group of staff, what royal writers later called the HMS Bubble. Think about this for a moment. Here was a couple in their late 90s, married for more than 70 years. For decades, they had lived with separate bedrooms, separate routines, even separate residences at times. By tabloid standards, people called that a distant relationship. But the moment real danger appeared, there was no hesitation. Philip left Wood Farm and came straight to Windsor to be with Elizabeth. No debate, no delay, just a simple decision to face the uncertainty together. That does not look like a broken marriage. It looks like a bond that had been built to last. Those months were different from their usual royal routine. Life slowed down. There were fewer schedules, fewer formal events, and more quiet time together than they had experienced in years. Even as Philip's health became more fragile and hospital visits increased, they were able to spend those final months side by side. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, passed away on April 9, 2021, at Windsor Castle. He was 99 years old. He did not pass away at Wood Farm, the place where he retired, but at Windsor, the place where he and the Queen chose to face the pandemic together. And what happened afterwards revealed something powerful. Queen Elizabeth, known for her strength and composure through decades of national crises, felt this loss deeply. She rarely showed emotion in public, but those close to her noticed the quiet change.
And where did she return again and again in the months after Philip's passing? Wood Farm. After Prince Philip's passing, Queen Elizabeth often traveled by helicopter to the Sandringham estate. But when she arrived, she did not stay at the grand Sandringham house. Instead, she chose Wood Farm, Philip's quiet cottage. Everything inside still felt like him. His watercolor paintings remained on the walls. The kitchen he had personally redesigned was exactly the same. It was the space where he had spent his peaceful final years, and the Queen chose to be there. One of her visits happened around February 6th, the anniversary of her father King George VI's death. That date had always carried deep meaning for her. It marked the moment in 1952 when she became queen and when Philip stepped into the role that shaped the rest of their shared life together. She did not return to Wood Farm to escape the memories. She returned because of them. Imagine sitting in the room someone you love arranged, surrounded by the artwork they painted, in the kitchen where you once shared simple meals together. That kind of return says something powerful. In the final years between Philip's passing in April 2021 and her own in September 2022, Wood Farm became more than a cottage for Elizabeth. It became the quiet place where the story of their marriage still lived. Wood Farm became the one place where the crown could be set aside. Inside that quiet cottage, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were not symbols of the monarchy. They were simply two people who had spent a lifetime together. So what does their story actually teach us? After 73 years of marriage, their relationship challenges many modern ideas about what love is supposed to look like. Today, people often imagine a perfect couple as two individuals who do everything together, always in the same room, always side by side, never spending real time apart. If a couple has separate bedrooms, separate routines, or personal time alone, many immediately assume something must be wrong. But Philip and Elizabeth quietly proved the opposite. From the beginning of their marriage, they kept separate bedrooms, not because their relationship lacked warmth, but because they respected each other's need for rest, privacy, and personal space. Their approach showed something powerful. True closeness does not always mean constant proximity.
Sometimes it means allowing each person the freedom to live fully while still choosing each other again and again across a lifetime. Even while living in different places at times, Philip and Elizabeth remained deeply connected. They visited each other often, shared conversations, and spent time together during the moments that truly mattered. And when the world faced the crisis of 2020, they came together immediately, spending the final year of Philip's life side by side at Windsor. What Princess Anne revealed is not really about where they lived, it is about the nature of mature love, the kind of love that understands another person completely, a love that says, "I know who you are, I know what you need, and I respect that." That kind of relationship is not built on constant closeness. It is built on trust, patience, and years of truly understanding each other. It is a deeper, steadier kind of bond that only grows stronger with time. And this is where the tabloids got the story completely wrong. For years, headlines suggested the couple's living arrangement meant their marriage was failing. Some reports even hinted at distance, tension, or a relationship that existed only for appearances. But the truth turned out to be the opposite. The arrangement was never a sign of weakness. It was evidence of a partnership that had lasted for more than 70 decades. For years, tabloids built dramatic stories around a misunderstanding. They created headlines suggesting distance and tension in the marriage of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. But those stories ignored the deeper truth. And that misunderstanding matters. Millions of people read those headlines and walked away believing a version of the story that simply wasn't real. The reality was a partnership built on duty, loyalty, and decades of shared life. Princess Anne has made her frustration clear. In her view, her parents were never estranged. They were simply adapted to each other's lives, and that is a huge difference. Prince Philip had given around 70 years of service to the monarchy. By the time he reached his later years, he had earned the right to step away and enjoy a quieter life. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth continued the role she had promised to uphold since she was young, carrying out her constitutional responsibilities with the same discipline she always showed. Their love allowed those two paths to exist at the same time. They supported each other's needs without letting it weaken their bond.
And when the moment came to stand together, they did. That is not the story of a broken marriage. It is the story of an extraordinary partnership. After Philip passed away, Elizabeth returned again to Wood Farm. She stayed in the cottage he loved, walked through the rooms he had arranged, and looked at the watercolor paintings he had hung on the walls. Queen Elizabeth stayed at Wood Farm through February 6th, the anniversary of her accession, the day in 1952 that changed her life forever. She was 95 years old, a widow, and still the Queen of England. Yet she chose to spend those quiet nights in a simple farmhouse, the place where Prince Philip had felt most at peace. Why? Because being close to the place he loved was the closest she could still be to him. That single detail says more about their marriage than years of tabloid headlines ever could. Princess Anne was right to speak out. Philip and Elizabeth did not live apart because their marriage was failing. They lived that way because their bond was strong enough to give each other freedom, respect, and understanding. After 73 years together, separate bedrooms, sometimes separate homes, their relationship still stood as one of the most remarkable partnerships of the modern era. Now, I want to hear from you. Did this story change the way you see their marriage? Did you once believe the tabloid narrative? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story powerful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves royal history. More fascinating stories are coming soon.